and welcome to the panel on being wickedly creative, adapting and thriving now. So this is going to be a conversation with successful creatives about agility and opportunity. So this is about finding motivation from several fantastic writers and creators who are sure to inspire. How you can build or even rebuild your brand in these really strange times. And I think we can all agree that these times are pretty strange. Just so you know, my name is Brandy June. I will be moderating this panel. I am a writer. My debut novel, Goldspun, comes out next year. And now I would like to start with having all of our fantastic panelists introduce themselves, and we will start with Jeff.
Hey guys, my name is Jeff Sweat. I'm the author of two books, Mayfly and Scorpion. They are kind of YA post-apocalyptic books set 100 years in the future in a world where a plague has killed everyone over the age of 17, which I promise I did not start writing this year. So it's a little eerie to kind of see that. In my day job, I am also the head of a PR agency. And so we'll definitely talk about the fact that a lot of the creativity this year has been in things other than literature as well.
Great. And Deb?
Well, first of all, hello, and I'm so thrilled to be part of this panel with these awesome people. I'm Debra Eckerling. I'm the author of Your Goal Guide, a roadmap for setting, planning, and achieving your goals, and founder of the Deb Method, which is my system for helping people figure out what they want and how to get it. So D stands for determine your mission, explore your options, and brainstorm your path. And I think especially in these challenging times when everybody has to, okay, I was going to do this, now I want to do that. You have to figure out what the that is in order to get there. So I do coaching, workshops, and I also have a website and community for writers, creatives, and entrepreneurs called writeoutonline.com. So that's me.
Well, thank you, Deb. Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin J. Anderson, and I've written a whole lot of books. My wife tells me it's 170, and she's the one who keeps track of these things. But, just a few days ago, my new book, Dune, the Duke of Caladan, came out, and it's like firing up close to touching New York Times bestseller list. We'll keep our fingers crossed for this next year, and that'll be, of my 170 books, I've had 56 of them that were national or international bestsellers. So let's hope I can knock it to 57 after next week, and we'll see. I've written for The X-Files, for Star Wars. I'm working on the new big budget Dune movie from Legendary, which the trailer just came out, got 25 million views in 1 week, but then the movie's delayed because of some little, have you heard of this pandemic thing? I haven't heard it. Anyway, I've done many years as a judge for Writers of the Future contest, which a lot of you may be entering or interested in. I'm a professor at Western Colorado University. I'm the publisher of WordFire Press. And in my spare time, I do panels for virtual science fiction conventions and book conventions.
Thank you, Kevin. I will say I'm a recent finalist of Writers of the Future contest. Highly recommend. And we'll have to ask you some more questions about productivity later, I think, as well. Echo, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Echo Chernik, and I've been an advertising illustrator for about the last 25 years or so. I've worked on a lot of mainstream brands for Miller, Camel, Coors, NASCAR, Trek, Celestial Seasonings, Jose Cuervo, De Kuiper. Also for smaller book covers, smaller companies. I've worked for pretty much everybody. I've been freelance, like I said, for the last 25 years or so. And throughout my career, I've learn to adapt and change with the times. So including this new recent, all the changes that have taken place lately. So hopefully I can help advise and help artists, keep their chins up and keep working during this interesting time. And I'm the coordinating judge for the Illustrators of the Future. So that means that whenever illustrators submit their work, I look at it first before sending it off to the judges. So.
Fantastic. Thank you, Echo. Russell.
I'm Russell Nohelty. I'm a USA Today bestselling author. I've written all of these books and a bunch more. I'm an editor. I edit a bunch of anthologies. I run a company called Wannabe Press and The Complete Creative. And that's me.
Awesome. And as Kevin mentioned, we have this little pandemic thing going on this year. So I wanted to start off with, what was your creative process before COVID? And if it has changed, how has it changed, or what elements are staying the same? So I think we'll reverse order this time. So Russell, how about you?
It's exactly the same, except I don't have shows. I get up at 6 a.m. I start writing at 9. I stop writing at 2, maybe 3, depending on how many words that I got done and whether I have anything left in it. I go on a walk. I listen to music, listen to a podcast, come back and do BS work from about 5 to 7, have meetings, et cetera, other stuff. Somewhere between 6 and 7, I stop whenever my wife stops. That's been my process for almost a decade now. And the only thing that ever changed, it was doing shows, and now I don't have shows. So I really have nothing to interrupt that process. And this has been, I guess, the most creatively productive time of my whole life.
There's that silver lining there. And just so that all of our audience knows, what shows are you referring to?
Conventions. That's how I make most of my money. I used to make most of my money is going to conventions, from convention to convention around the country. Everywhere from like San Diego Comic-Con to a local show in LA, Denver, New York, Phoenix, all over the place. I would do about 20 to 30 a year.
Are you doing a lot of virtual conventions now, or just not doing the shows at all mostly?
I'm mostly not doing the shows at all. Okay. I used to do a lot. I did a lot. I did hundreds of like podcasts and such throughout the course of this year. And I found that for the most part, I've winnowed all of that down, and now I'm mostly just writing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Echo, what about you? What about your creative process before and now?
Well, my creative process hasn't really changed that much, but my client base and targeting who I'm looking for work for has changed. I found over my career that in order to stay busy as an illustrator and to become as successful as I am, I've had to often change who I'm focusing my who I'm focusing my advertising towards, who I want to work with. For instance, I refer to it as fishing with different lures. During certain times, there's more advertising work out there, so I'll advertise and look for more of that. Right now, there's not a lot of advertising work with the pandemic. Shows also, I'd go out and I do the conventions during the summer, but there's not that as well. So I've turned all my fishing attention over to working on my own personal pieces, and with the exception of a few book covers and a few greeting cards and a couple small projects, I'm trying to spend most of my time working on my own pieces and building up pieces for a show and for a personal project that I'm doing. So really hasn't changed too much. I'm trying to take all this dead time and turn it to my advantage. So that's what I recommend that artists do as well.
I really like that idea of diversifying your project so that if one area is, kind of waning right now, you have another area to focus on.
That's how I've managed to support a family of 4 for my entire career. So it's to diversify.
Fantastic. And can you touch just on, it stayed the same, but what is your creative process?
My creative process in terms of how my day goes depends what I'm working on. I like to work on 3 or 4 different projects at a time. Usually one of them is digital, one of them is traditional. Then I'm also working on a sketchbook. So I get up and look at my schedule and see what I have to do for the day. Put that first and foremost, and then I go do a little bit of social media networking, a little bit of my own advertising work, send out some emails and such, and then I get to work on the project that's the most pressing. Then I take a break for lunch and go ahead and start working on some of my own projects for the afternoon. And if I've achieved what I think is enough for the day, then I'll reward myself by working on some more projects in the evening.
Awesome. Thank you. Wonderful. And Kevin, would you let us know what your creative process is and how or if it has changed?
Well, and like Russell said, I used to spend like so much of my time all year long going to convention after convention after convention. I would do 2 or 3 a month. I would teach writers' workshops, all kinds of things like that. And that was a fair amount of my activity, about my business. And I would meet fans, I'd sell books, I'd get names for my mailing list. That was this huge thing, and all of a sudden that just went away. Like if you had a Blockbuster video store, all of a sudden they're gone. And that's what I used to do. And oddly enough, I'm finding that I'm just as busy and just as productive writing my novels and comic scripts and doing social media stuff. But the fact that I'm not going to an airport and flying either internationally or to some other place from Thursday afternoon through Monday lunchtime 3 times a month, I've got a huge amount of extra time to do my writing, which is actually what I like to be doing. I mean, that's the thing that I really like to be doing. And I've got so many, in fact, next week, I've got a monthly comic book that's coming out from Boom Studios, an adaptation of one of my Dune novels. And so I've got a monthly comic script deadline. I've got 3 graphic novels under contract. I've got 4 novels under contract from Tor Books. I've got some of my own stuff that I'm publishing. And so I'm keeping really busy. I told my agent that I never thought in a million years that being a reasonably successful science fiction author would be one of the most stable jobs in the nation. And I keep getting work. I keep getting books sold. I keep doing my promotion here. But as for my creative process, I've always been sort of an odd duck in that I live in the mountains of Colorado. I'm surrounded by beautiful scenery. And I have, for decades, I love to take a digital recorder. I've got, hold on. Here, this is my digital recorder. And I have my notes for today's chapter or 2, and I'll go out on a trail and I'll just hike for miles and just dictate my chapters. And I've done that forever. And now that everybody's locked down, I am still allowed to go out hiking in a national forest. I can still go off on some isolated trail. And so my work process has been just fine. I come home and I upload my files to my typist, and then I spend the afternoon here editing. So like I said, I never thought that this would be an unchanged profession when everybody else has been turned upside down. But being a writer, we've, like Echo said, we've always tried to come up with a million different income streams because they keep drying up so fast. Everything that worked really great last year doesn't work this year. And so any writer who has survived for a long time in this genre has had to come up with a whole bunch of different ways to make a living. It used to be you could write a book and get paid enough for it, and then you could write the next book and get paid enough for it. But that's no longer the case. So we've always had to keep throwing darts at the dartboard and hoping that we hit something. And, writers have always been flexible and imaginative. And the one thing I would suggest, though, is that you don't try to make a career writing pandemic-related books because nobody wants to read them.
So I love the idea of diversifying, and I like how Echo mentioned, the different kinds of projects she works on. For you, Kevin, as a writer, what does it mean to diversify? Is it writing different genres of books, or just a bunch of different books? What does that mean for you?
Well, I write a bunch of novels. Like I said, I'm also doing a bunch of comic scripts, which I broke into. I'm consulting on movies and TV shows. I'm teaching online writers workshops. I'm hired as a college professor, so I get paid to teach online classes. And the cool thing about that is I actually get healthcare by doing it. And I'm selling books. I've got a whole library a whole shelves full of my books, and I'm just signing autographed Kevin J. Anderson books to my Uber fans, and I've sold probably 500, 600 copies just by the mail that way. So you try everything, and if it doesn't work, then you try something else. And gone are the days when you could go, I'm a writer, so I'm just going to write a book and mail it off to an editor and never think about it again. That just doesn't happen.
Nice. I love this idea that even in this pandemic, sort of the Renaissance person of doing lots of different things is being so successful. So Deb, how about same question for you? What is your creative process, and how has it or has it not changed?
Well, I kind of feel like the token nonfiction writer here, even though I do know that Russell does a little bit of that as well. My process, it really hasn't changed either because I work from home. I think I put on makeup more now than I did pre-pandemic because I'm on these Zoom chats and meetings every day during the week. And we're recording this. It's very odd for me to actually like get camera ready on the weekend. So that's kind of funny for me. My book, Your Goal Guide, came out in January. So I spent the beginning of the year on a mini book tour around LA. And I've always been, I need to get to do virtual events. But it never like made it to the top of my list until that was the only option. And I think a week after lockdown, and not even, I got my first debut. I do a lot of speaking to chambers and specialty groups on helping with goals, setting yourself up for success. I was doing a lot of rebooting your goals sorts of workshops, how to be more productive. And it was great. It was like, here, Deb, jump into the pool because there's just the pool. So that for me has been the biggest change. The way I divide my day is, I guess, similar but different. The beginning of each week, I make this monster to-do list, and I divide it by clients and projects and personal projects, and and just basically kitchen sink kind of list. Then I divide it out into the different categories, whether it's for me, whether it's for a communications client or a coaching client, and then things related to workshops, speaking, etc., and then my own stuff, because if we don't make time, like Echo was saying, you have to make time for the fun stuff. You have to set that in your schedule, because you're never going to get to it if you are constantly chasing the things that people want from you. So I'll make my laundry list, and I'll look at my week, and I will set up a couple chunks of time. I schedule everything, but some of those chunks are for my projects. I've got an appointment every day to do one sort of thing for my work, appointment every day for an outreach, and usually within a week I will have 3 couple-hour chunks for my projects, and then everything else falls in. So no, it hasn't changed, except it has, and it's kind of awesome. Echo called it dead time. I call it found time, because you're not commuting, you're not traveling. Great. So I asked a client, what's your commute? And she goes, oh, it was 20 minutes, just 10 minutes each way. I said, that's wonderful. That's 100 minutes each week to work on the thing that you want to work on that you never have time for. Okay, you can have like 40 minutes to do like fun stuff or binge watch, but it's still a bonus hour. So how are you going to use that?
Awesome.
I think a lot of the fun is you get this extra bonus time that you don't have any excuses. The time is there, use it. You'll be much happier if you have.
Great. I love that. And especially because I know a lot of listeners or viewers right now are also working full time. I am a marketing director during the day. So finding that extra time is really helpful too. Jeff, I'd like to hear from you as well. And as someone who also has a day job, and especially in PR, which is so important these days, would love to hear both how your creative process may or may not have changed, as well as, if there are, shifts that you're seeing in PR.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know, I guess if necessity is the mother of invention, then this year's required all sorts of invention. And I think creativity is taking all sorts of forms for me. When I'm lucky, it's writing, but otherwise it's things like, so I work with I run a PR agency that actually does marketing for ad agencies, that does PR for ad agencies. So it's a very kind of wacky niche, but it's a lot of fun. And this has been a really tough year for all marketing, I think, as Brandy and Echo would know. And we found that our clients were really kind of left reeling, at the very beginning of the pandemic. They just didn't know what to do. And so we created a content series. We called it Agencies Under Quarantine. And it was a daily content series that went on for about 2 weeks straight with like pretty amazing panels. And it was such a cool experience. Although I'd say I would not recommend doing a daily show if you haven't done it before. After like day 2 of like all this insanity, I remember thinking, this would be a really good time to start using cocaine. Like I kind of got it. Like I hadn't used it before, and I was like, oh, now this is why art makes sense. So I didn't, but I did manage to get through it. And what ended up happening was that I started to get energy from the actual experience of creating this, from the people I was connecting with, the people that were in an audience who were super engaged. And what I've kind of found is that creativity doesn't have the same boundaries it used to. You know, I mean, the fact that we're sitting here on a virtual, a virtual event is indicative of the fact that all these kind of boundaries have shifted. And frankly, like as an author and as a PR person, I think it just means that even though it can be daunting, there are a lot more avenues to explore. And I'll talk a little bit about that later, but just around book promotion, all those kinds of things are things that like wouldn't have been possible, or I wouldn't have felt were possible before the pandemic. That said, I think I have not had any sensation of getting more time. I definitely have felt like I had significantly less time to work with. And so I think, which I suspect is the case for a lot of people, where we're sort of probably hustling and scraping a lot more for things than we used to. So for me, what I will say is that like writing tends to feel sometimes like a luxury. I don't get to do it as often as I like because there are these other projects that are super crucial as well. But what I try to do is block out my mornings and I've never thought I was a morning person, but it turns out I actually write a little bit better in the morning until about 10 o'clock. Then I have my meetings and kind of regular work things throughout the day. And then I try to fit in another hour or two of writing before dinner. And then similar to Kevin, what I've found really effective is after I've kind of written through the day, I will go for a walk. I'll walk the dogs, and I will bring I'll bring my phone with me. And as I'm going, I will typically come up with the ideas for the next day, and I'll dictate them either in a voice recognition software or actual audio notes like Kevin does. And what's awesome is that, alternately, if I don't do either of those, I'll come home and I'll write down kind of my quick thoughts for the outline for the next day. And what's amazing is that you then, you always start with something already kind of on the page the next day, which is because it's really tough to find that kind of starting point. And that's the other thing I will say this, like when I'm successful as a writer is when I'm writing every day. And it's not just, I think, for the discipline and for the practice. It's because the story never leaves your mind. I have a saying that for me, creativity lives in the margins. It lives kind of on the fringes. It's why we have these great ideas when we're taking a shower or we're walking. It's because we're not specifically focused on having to create something at that moment, but we're sort of allowing opportunities for that to happen.
I love that. I love a lot of what you said. Yes, Kevin.
I wanted to just kind of bring out something about creativity in that I like to compare creativity and writing to cooking, because I like to do a lot of cooking and stuff around. And I found, this is in my lecture about people that want to be writers and they just go and get an English degree, but they don't get anything else. And I go, well, that's like wanting to be a big chef and you buy a lot of cookbooks, but no ingredients. Okay. And if all you're doing is buying and studying cookbooks, but you don't have any ingredients, then you can't cook a good meal. And I think creativity involves input and experiences. And if you can remember all the way back to like when the world was normal, we were trying, like all these conventions and stuff I'm talking about, just meeting all these people, all these interesting fans and readers and other writers. And I met a lot of actors and all this just is interesting input to go into your creative process. And in just the past 2 years, I went to China a year ago. Right now, I was climbing the Great Wall of China. I was in China. I was traveling around. I was in the wet markets. I was eating these really bizarre things. Maybe I'm the one that brought it over to the U.S. I don't know. But I got a big award in Mexico City, and I toured the Teotihuacan pyramids and the ruins there. And I went to Ecuador, and I went to Australia, and I went to New Zealand. And everything that you see is just like, I can use this in a story. And even closer to home, I would go to Arches National Park in Utah and see the weird rock formations, or the Indian ruins in Mesa Verde, or I'd go to New York and I'd see a Broadway play, or you do all this stuff. All of these experiences are things that a writer can use as, this is something I could add into a book. And the thing I'm getting to here is, now with this stupid pandemic, we're stuck in a room and we can't really get all this input. Like I can't go. I was supposed to go to the Ukraine a couple of months ago. I was supposed to be in Abu Dhabi next month. I was supposed to go to all these places, but instead we're here. And if you're a creative person and you can't get your input, then your pantry's going to run empty. So I think you should go out of your way to try to either take online classes or watch some seminars, read more books, do whatever you can to keep getting new experiences, even if you are sort of stuck at home.
Yeah, I love that idea of, now that we're at home, might be the time to buy some more of those metaphorical cookbooks. And I like the idea of, getting your inspiration from all these different things and, focusing on some more, internally items. Russell, I think you had your hand.
I did. I agree with what Kevin was saying, but I really just wanted to give a counterpoint to what Kevin, everyone on the panel basically said about like doing more and scrambling and having to like change. Like I do like 10% of what I did. Like I do that 10% way better. But for me, the pandemic let me cut out things that suddenly didn't. Like I used to do book marketing, as you know, Brandy, and I hate it. Like I loathe it. It's one of the things that I hate most in the entire world is doing book marketing for other people. And no one was buying book marketing services in like March and April. And so I was just like, well, this is the chance. This is now my chance to cut it out and like never have to deal with it again, or like do it on my terms instead of on other people's terms. And I found that for almost everything that I did, that I was hustling for, like making $100 here or $2,000 there in a year, or like all these little things, I just cut them all. And this year has just been freeing because I couldn't do shows and I couldn't be flown to writers' conferences all over the country. Not that I don't like that, but like I don't like it as much as writing. I don't like it as much as like being in front of my computer doing creative stuff, or like going on a walk or being with my wife. So all of the while there's something to be said for like doing a whole bunch of other things, I suppose I've found that I'm more creative when I cut all of that stuff out. It really hurt my bottom line. Like just the bottom fell out of like a bunch of industries that I was part of. But in doing so, I was able to double down on the things that I was doing before that I really liked. And like ended up recovering a lot, though not all of that money, through other means, and then be able to say, well, maybe I don't hate book marketing as much as I said I did. What I hate is having to do it all year.
All the time.
Maybe I just will do it like in January and February and then not the rest of the year. And maybe I'll do like, instead of hosting a bunch of virtual events, I'll do one. I enjoyed it one time. I just didn't enjoy it once a month every time. And now when I'm looking at 2020, I can say like some of the things I just hate and I'm just not going to bring back. But like a lot of the things I can now say, how can I make this work for me? Because I'm not making money there. And I'm like, this is now the floor. Like what I did in 2020 in the last 6 months was the floor of what I can do. And now I can try and augment it instead of always saying, oh, there's a speaking engagement for $20. I guess I got to like at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday instead of going to write, which is when I'm gonna take this one engagement because I have to. Mm-hmm. And like just taking every input that came to me, I can now say, well, here's where my base is. And like, I can now take a meeting during this specific time. And if you are available in this specific time, then I will consider taking a meeting with you. But otherwise, don't care. I don't care how much you're paying me. I just will not do it. And that has been the most liberating thing about this whole year and the most creative part of this whole year.
Nice. It definitely sounds like a lot of us we're so busy with the day-to-day activities that this has almost caused a lot of people to take a step back and kind of consider, what are the important things and how much time do I spend on each?
Absolutely.
Echo. Thank you.
I can, first of all, I completely agree with Kevin and Russell. That well put, because all of the obligations you had to take before are sort of out of the way. And for me, I've been able to spend more time working on personal pieces and experimenting with things that I just didn't have a chance to before. I'm like, oh, I want to do this painting, but it keeps getting put off. And now I look at it and go, yeah, I can do that now. What I wanted to say is that for creatives, that can be absolutely terrifying to all of a sudden have everything you're used to fall away. You have the shows fall away, and I encourage creatives to not look at that as scary and terrifying and this huge abyss, but to try to shift it and look at it like an opportunity. And it's hard to do because you look at it, you go, there goes all my income. All right, take a breath and then think, well, how could I turn this to my advantage and do what we're all doing, everyone in this panel is doing, and we're adjusting our income, our schedules, adjusting what we're creating, adjusting our markets that we're fishing towards, and in turning it to our advantage. So take a breath, try not to be scared, and just remember that everybody is going through this, and just figure out what can I do that when this is done will help me, even if in the meantime it's not making me a ton of money. So
I love it. And also, so just previously, my previous best year of releasing stuff, I released 3 things. This year I released 10 and I maybe 11 books. So those are the things that I was able to suddenly go, well, I could do a bunch of these book launches now, and I can focus and dedicate time to it that I couldn't have before. And so again, I'm not making all of the money back that I did before, but basically 4xing the amount of books that I'm launching a year is a lot more money in that respect as well. But yeah, absolutely. I love that you're forced to take the creative projects and do the creative thing, because for months there was just nothing else.
Nice. Deb, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did, because Kevin mentioned cooking, and I couldn't drop that without putting in my 2 cents. That's something that I've been doing for my creative breaks. So if I go more than 3 days without taking some downtime to whether it's soup or I'm now obsessed with pretzel rolls, it's an hour out of my day, but it feels so good. And the reward is, you have food. So whether your hobby is cooking or knitting or you like to garden, I think it's really important now, because, people are running from panic to I don't have enough time, or I have too much time, or whatever, to find those things that are going to replenish you creatively and give yourself that time. Don't work all day, every weekend. That's just, at least, in the old way, when you went places, there was okay, this is the work day, and then you did your fun stuff at night, and this is the weekend, and that's when you do your projects. And now that everything's kind of mushed together, I think it's really important for people to look at the big picture, to not answer email at 11 o'clock at night. I don't do that, by the way. I actually do the things I tell people, or I follow my own. When I follow the advice I give other people, I'm much more successful in my own life. But give yourself a cutoff time to the end of each workday. If you can, take off some, if not all of the weekend. Find pockets of time, and then find the things that bring you joy and do more of them. And that will help re-energize you for everything else you want to create.
I think that's a great point too, because, especially as, when we first thought COVID might be a week or 2, and now we're into month 7 or year 400, I don't remember. It's really important to know that this is definitely a marathon. It's not a sprint, and to do things that re-energize you and so you don't burn out. Jeff, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I really think there's something to be said. And I think probably what COVID has taught us is that there's really something to be said for practical creativity. And by that, I mean something is kind of, first of all, hands-on, but in some way makes your life better. For me, COVID was kind of a chance to look around and see how bad my backyard looked. And I started doing pretty hefty design and renovation. When my wife has been the primary cook for a long time, just because she likes it better. But as she got busier and busier, that became harder and harder. So I started cooking and found that I enjoyed it. And what happens is I just think you do need a way to decompress from whatever burdens are kind of on your plate. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to channel it into something that is actively kind of physically, helping your surroundings. And it has the benefit of being relatively mindless work. And that, again, that's where the creativity for other things tends to come in.
I love that. I really, really like the idea, the downtime and the time to, just let your brain play, really. And I think you guys have all done such a fantastic job of showing us how we can, diversify what we're doing or, focus on things. And I'm sure it's not easy. You guys all make it look really easy because you're doing it so successfully. So I wanted to address some concerns people may be having about the difficulties this year. I know for myself, I had a lot more time because I wasn't commuting, but I also was super anxious and I wasn't sleeping. So I felt like I had less time. So what I would like to hear, what are some of the, obstacles that you found this year and how have you, overcome them? Either, as Russell mentions, the lack of shows, or, maybe it's more having to deal with the anxieties or the concerns with the world, or, kind of what are the challenges that you've seen this year and how have you overcome them? So I think this time we'll start with Echo. I think, did you have your hand up?
Oh, sure. Okay, we'll go with that. I wasn't intentional, but challenges this year. So yes, this has definitely been a challenging year, and I don't know about everyone else, but it's involved some changes that I had to take on my end in order to get to where I needed to be in order to keep my schedule going and keep the work going and stuff. For instance, in March, as a freelance illustrator, I've been doing freelance for 20 years or so, and it took the first couple of years to sort of adapt and figure out where that flow is, to look ahead a few months to know which projects are coming in and how much money would be coming in, and to balance it all, because with freelance it's very tumultuous. You never know. You have to keep an eye on what's coming in. And you have to plan ahead. And in March, I looked and I saw the first show get canceled, and I thought, ooh, most of my shows in the summer usually bring me into the fall, and I have a plan. And I went, ooh. And so I made the executive decision to move my entire studio in March before it got really bad, and to completely move up. We hadn't planned on moving up to our studio in Camino Island, where I am for the next couple of years. But we just shut down and moved everything early, which was able to compensate for the lack of shows and everything. And that was a big change and adjustment, but it was definitely the right decision looking now. And a lot of people had to do some major restructuring with things. So that was my big restructuring.
Nice. Yeah, my office went remote in March, so it was all of us suddenly making, our homes our new offices. And
so the studio was in my home, so we had to move the house and the studio, and we had just moved 6 months earlier, so it was like move again.
Wow,
so
that's a lot. That's a lot. Russell, you had something?
Yeah, I think it's odd when you look at your life and you're like, wow, I guess I'm just really antisocial, huh? Like, because aside from shows,
we're writers. Hello.
Yeah, I mean, and like I am an extrovert, so I always try and do like one external thing, like a panel or something, or talk to one person, or have like a dinner once a week, just to like not go insane. But yeah, I restructured everything. Like I cut so much stuff. I had been planning for the last 3 years that this was going to be the year that I like broke like 200 grand. This was going to be the year. I've been like stuck at the same like number for years. And I was like ready. I had the whole plan. Like I had like courses, and I had Kickstarters, and I had shows, and like I had advertising. I had the whole thing ready to go. And what ended up happening was shows got cut, and then most of my courses got cut. I picked up some consulting to make up for it, but what I found was people wanted like one-on-one or live in-person stuff. They didn't so much want to go through like a course on their own time. Part of the reason they wanted to do like courses was to like have the interaction with people and accountability. So a lot of my like tried and true ways to sell courses and book marketing services and stuff just like ate away. And I looked at it at the end of the day and it was like, oh, so if I just like didn't do any of that stuff, like I would be, I would be right around, $100,000. It's a lot less than $200,000, but like not so much different than the 130 that I was making in my before, like doing 900 things. So my wife looked at me and she said, because I like doing courses and speaking. And she's like, yeah, but you work 40 hours a week doing that part of your business. And then you literally just dump it into writing. Like all of that money is just like 20, maybe it's 20 hours a week that like you make money doing it, but like you just literally dump all of that money back into writing. And so it's just like, it feels like you're wasting 20 hours a week. It's like, what if you just like did writing? Like it's crazy. Like what if you just did the thing that like you were wasting all of your time to make enough money to do? And that was a big challenge for me. Again, like it was not easy for me to cut all this stuff out because like Brandy, like I do 900 things. And like I had 900 like pieces of business and I run a Verizon dealership and all this other stuff like on top of all of these things. So like the challenge the challenge is to be comfortable in the stillness, in like the darkness, in like the oh my God, there is literally nothing to do this week. Like nobody is doing things. Like there's no way to go out and watch movies. There's no way to like go and hang out at dinners. You can't go to a bar and like have a drink. Like you can't drive around LA and like waste time going from one place to another and be like, I was really productive, even though 90% of that time was just driving. All you had was like, and I think this is the big fear. It was a big fear for me. It's like, oh my God, I just have to look inside myself. I just have to look inside and like be comfortable with that part of me. And I think that is the thing that like is the biggest challenge is, and I think that's what really separates the really successful creative people that I know is they are comfortable like thinking, like doing deep work. They are comfortable going on a hike for 4 hours, just like with their work, their thoughts. And they allow themselves to let their brain think. They just allow themselves to like, that's an interesting input. That's an interesting input. And they go through their life and they just collect these things in their like lizard brain. And like they let it make these weird connections because they're not constantly running at 100% speed. Mm-hmm. It's that joke that like writers always say, like looking out of a window is like 90% of the job. But it's not really that. 90% of the job is letting yourself be comfortable with the thoughts in your head so that you can make the connection you need that is interesting and new to put it on the page. And I hope that was the challenge and the success for me this year, I think.
I like how, it can be, two different sides of the same coin. And I'm glad it's, worked out. Yeah.
I mean, how like I struggle with anxiety and depression. And so like I like am as much about like it's as hard as for me to look inside as anyone else. But getting comfortable with it is like the struggle of a life, but also how I've been able to have literally the most productive year of my life writing wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's great insights. And thank you for being so open about them. Kevin, how about you? Obstacles this year.
Well, and restructuring, and I'm going to kind of turn around one of our big topics a few minutes ago is that yes, if you take time for yourself and you relax, and I've done a lot of thinking, and objectively, I am less stressed and more relaxed now than I have been since my career took off. And my first book was published 30 years ago. I mean, I'm not frantically running from one thing to another, but the problem. This is the opposite problem in that now it's hard to get the motivation just because, well, tomorrow's the same as today and next week's the same as this week. And with the frantic lifestyle we used to have, there were always these imminent micro deadlines. Like I have to get on a plane to Boston on Thursday, so I really need to get these chapters done before then. Because when I'm gone away for a weekend, that disrupts my writing, my editing. So I just need to get it done by then. Or I've got a class coming up or something else. And so there was always these little like milestones that you had to go, I really need to finish my first draft by this day because I'm gone for something and it's going to interrupt it. But now this week is the same as last week was, and everything's the same. So it's like, well, if I don't get it done this week, I'll just keep going and finish. And there's a story of a really good friend of mine who's since passed away, but he was a successful writer in the 90s, and he published a whole bunch of successful science fiction novels, and he was working at Hewlett-Packard as a full-time job. And his wife was working at Hewlett-Packard, but he was publishing these books, writing in the evenings. And then this terrible thing happened in that his wife got a big promotion. And she came to him and said, okay, I've just doubled my income. We don't need your income at Hewlett-Packard. So you can quit your job and just be a full-time writer, which is what you've always wanted to do. And so he did it. He quit his job. He had all the time in the world to write books, and he only published one more novel in the next 10 years, and then he died because he never had to do it. There was never I've got to fight for these couple of hours to work in the evening. There was never I've got a job all week long, so I better make the most of my weekends to get my writing chapters done. It was like, oh, I've got all day every day, so I might as well just play in the garden, or I might as well just do needlepoint or whatever. And he just never had that urgency that he had to write. And so that's an important thing for creatives now with the pandemic is you have to find your own inspiration and your own deadlines and force yourself to get something done, whether or not you've got a deadline coming up. Because, NaNoWriMo is starting in a couple of weeks. So for those of you who that's the National Novel Writing Month. That's people commit to writing one 50,000 word book in the month of November. And I encourage people, you can do it. Everybody can do that if you put your mind to it, but not if it's like, well, I'll just take this week off and then I'll work next week. Mm-hmm. I think that's the hardest thing to restructure.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of great points. I think Nano is a great way to, kind of force yourself to write a draft. And, I loved what you mentioned about, finding the motivation. And I think that's great advice during the pandemic, as well as, inspiring for people who are trying to find those hours, especially who, work full time. So, they need to take advantage of the precious hours that they're not. Jeff, how about you? What about obstacles and overcoming them this year?
It's funny. I think like a lot of writers and as a lot of business owners, I worked at home before the pandemic, so that didn't change. But what did change is suddenly I had people in the house with me. And I will say that was a pretty massive obstacle. My wife was teaching college and suddenly had to switch to online instruction. My kids were home. I've got three kids. Thank God they're teenagers, which I never thought I'd say that. But like all the things that used to annoy me about them disappearing for hours on end are actually the things that have sort of saved us. But I would say so having people around is certainly changes the creative process. We have to work harder to find kind of space and time to work on it. And then I just think that whether our lives are going well professionally or not right now, there are just so many stresses, whether it's from the pandemic, whether it's from politics going on right now. And I think that's a huge impediment to creativity. I know, I was laughing, Kevin, when you were talking about not writing a pandemic book. So I had written the two books I wrote are set 100 years in the future, but I had a book set which basically sort of goes through this plague. It's called The End that starts killing all the adults. And I started writing it before the pandemic, and when it came out, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to sort of serialize it. I'm just going to do it kind of almost have it parallel the pandemic as it goes. And I will just say it got too depressing too quickly, to work on it. I still think it kind of would have been kind of a cool idea. And I actually think there are enough people who do somehow like pandemic fiction, which that's a whole other topic. But I just couldn't do it. I needed to have something that was more of a kind of change of pace. So in terms of the projects I picked something that's a little lighter, that was sort of a palate cleanser. But I also think the thing that's a really important part of all this for people, creatives or not, is just taking care of yourself, and so my morning time when I write is also when I meditate. And that's something that's taken on, I did it before, but it's taken on more urgency. The walking, the kind of all the things that we've been talking about, those are all really crucial parts of that. And Deb talking about cooking, things like that. So I would say the biggest things that are going to keep you from being creative is just not feeling like you're healthy and safe. And so if you can deal with that, I think you give yourself a leg up.
Great. There's a lot of really good points there. Deb?
Well, I think the big thing, and for me, like I said before, my book came out in January. So excited. I had self-published too before, but this was my first actual you could hold it book. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to do all these events and it's going to be great. And then grinding halt. But again, I reshifted. I started doing that thing that I've been meaning to do for years, which is the online events and workshops. And also for my work, for my communications, my consulting, it got quiet for a few months because a lot of people were really hesitant about moving forward on anything. So I said, okay, if I was my client, what would I tell me to do? I would say, as I mentioned before, schedule your time, create projects. I started a Facebook Live show I've been leading a Twitter chat for a few years. My publisher said, hey, do you want to do a Facebook Live version of it? Okay. I was really game for anything and everything to get my word out there in the electronic way because the physical way was no longer an option. So it was a challenge, but it was fun. But still, even today, there are people who are still freaked out. And I have a rule that helps, which is if I'm feeling oh my god, and I'm mostly optimistic, you and Russell know me. This is most of the time anyway. If I feel anxious, I get to be anxious for 2 minutes and then I'm done. That's it. Done for the day. I don't think I've ever had to be anxious more than what I had to be. More than once a week, because every now and then it's but really, you just have to keep moving forward. So the thing that I think helps the most is setting schedules, setting rules, and for creative, setting deadlines. Because if it's only in your head, you may or may not get it done. I've got my Facebook group. It's all about, okay, what are you working on? What did you accomplish? My Write On Facebook group, I do a different thread every day just to keep everybody kind of excited and communicating and networking. And that's another part of it. If work is quiet, if you're not inspired, go do a 30-minute thing on LinkedIn and connect with old friends. Find rules that work for you. And by rules, I mean I do 30 minutes of LinkedIn at least 3 days a week, just reconnecting and commenting. I spend 30 minutes a few days a week making sure that I'm working on my things.
And actually, that leads me into our final, because we only have about a minute and a half left. So I just kind of wanted to thank you all for being on this great panel. And in the last minute, go around and have you once again let people know where they can find you. I know Deb has a great accountability Facebook group. So let's start with Deb and we'll do a quick where to find you.
Okay, well, you can find me under the Deb Method or at Write On Online on all the socials. Please join my Write On Online group. If you want to reach out, info@thedebmethod.com or find me on social and say that you met me here. And if you want to learn more about my book, it's yourgoalguidebook.com. We'll take you there.
Thank you. And Russell?
You
can get free books at russellnohelty.com. Sign up for my mailing list. You get free comics, free novels, and some free nonfiction as well.
Great. Echo?
I'm on Facebook. I'm also on echochernik.com. And my recently launched Patreon is the excaliberproject.com, THEXCALIBER project.com.
Fantastic. Kevin?
And find me on Facebook on the official Kevin J. Anderson page. You'll find me there. My website is wordfire.com. And just like Russell, if you sign up for our readers group, you get a bunch of free books and free audios and stuff like that. And new book just came out, The Duke of Caladan. So 5 more copies sold and we'll make the New York Times list. So all of you, the wait's on you.
Great. Deb?
You can find me at jeffsweatbooks.com, also Jeff Sweat Books on Instagram and Twitter. And I would say if you're a writer out there, I'm about to launch a new kind of virtual theater for lit readings called Lit Theater. And so I'm looking for great authors who love to read, and this will be with a full cast. So follow up with me there, and we'll start getting you in the pipeline.
Wonderful. And I'm Brandy again. You can find me at brandyjune.com. And thank you guys so much.